Hello everyone, and welcome to GTSCast, the best podcast about Giantess and tiny people around. Monica's Precious couldn't make it today. He's not feeling too good. So you just gotta deal with me. Sorry. I'm Distrhon, and today we have a special guest.
Oh, hey, I guess that's where I come in. I'm Matt Huntley. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry to hear about Monica, but hopefully he's doing okay, and we'll see him next week or whenever you guys do another one. There's a few spots on the internet you guys can find my work if you'd like to check it out, so I'll just give those links really fast. There's MathewJHuntley.com. On Instagram, it's Instagram.com/MattHuntleyArtist. And I'm also on Patrion, so it's Patreon.com/Mathew Huntley. And if you don't know, I'm an artist. I oil paint, so yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be able to find all those links down below. So, Matt, you've got a Kickstarter.
Yeah, let's just jump right in. So, it's my first ever Kickstarter, and it's going to end on March 28th. So, if you're interested, you should definitely jump in now while you still can. But I'm doing a signed and numbered limited edition print run of my newest painting, which is called the Shepherdess Tinsor Flock. The prints are 18 by 24 inches with a really classy white border, and the actual image is 15 by 22. And these are printed on Fuji Professional Crystal Archive paper with luster finish, so it's going to last at least 100, if not 100 years, if not longer, if you take care of it. So it's like super high quality. It's not just something you pick up at like a Target or a Walmart or something like that. And this Kickstarter is the only time you're going to be able to get them. There's like an exclusive thing. And also, depending on what tier you back at, you can also get original art from me. So I will make you a one-of-a-kind ink drawing if you'd like something special, that no one else in the entire planet has. So that's what's going on right now.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry to vomit all that information at you.
No, it's fine. That's why you're here. So, I was just going to say, tell us a bit about yourself, but we've kind of covered that. So I noticed in some of your DeviantArt posts that quite a few of your artworks were actually university projects when you were studying art. How did that go down with like your classmates and your instructor and all that? What was that experience like?
Oh yeah, so I started, I was in art college from 2012 to 2016. So I started painting these probably 2015-ish. And I mean, honestly, it was pretty open. Everybody there was basically pretty open-minded. My professors were like, man, I love this. Some of my classmates had mixed reactions, which is really funny too, because the reaction from like my friends or like my boss at work goes to CrossFit. She's a CrossFitter. They really love it. But at the time when I was making them, reactions from my classmates were very mixed. They were they were kind of like, this is really weird. It's like, hey, if you want to. Because I went to a fine art school, so it wasn't just like an illustration program. It was technically like quote unquote fine art. So I was one of the only people in my class doing realistic paintings.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do my thing, and if you want to dump paint from the ceiling and see how it lands, and then that's your piece or whatever. It's kind of like this just mutual agree to disagree sort of thing, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not a huge fan of a modern art sort of just do random stuff kind of thing.
It's not for me. Without getting too far into it, I feel like sometimes, or at least from my experience in art school, that could be a lot of people would be like, oh man, I really can't paint faces, so I'm just not going to, or like. It can be used as a bit of a crutch, like, oh, I'm not really good at this, and it's hard to paint well, so I'm just going to do abstraction instead, if that makes sense.
You actually see a lot of that in 3D artwork as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's way easier to create like a monster, like some kind of thing that's like a fantasy creature, because they don't exist. And so you don't have... It's like when you're painting a face, everyone knows what a face looks like, right? And so when there's something a little bit off about it, you can tell almost immediately.
Oh, yeah, that uncanny valley.
And like people who do character design, they'll often start with monsters again because they're easier, and then they'll sort of move towards the human form. Oh, at least that's my experience anyway.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I'm not surprised. or even the number of people that like purely just use like a DAZ or like pre-made assets as opposed to like bespoke original content.
I mean, I'm not gonna poop on DAZ.
Well, no, I'm not pooping on DAZ either. I actually, part of my process, I use DAZ a lot, believe it or not, because
actually.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, you finish.
Well, when I'm doing a painting, I usually start... first in the sketchbook, I do these really sloppy thumbnails that nobody should ever see because they're basically gibberish if you're not me. Like you look at them and it's like, oh, what's that squiggle there? I'm like, oh, that's a person. But at that point, I'll go into Photoshop, and I'll do a digital study, which if you guys want to see some, I'm on DeviantArt as well, or they're posted to my Instagram. You can scroll back through so you can see all the stuff I'm talking about. But I'll paint in Photoshop. If I have a really weird angle, like a point of view angle or something that's just really wacky and hard to draw from imagination, I'll use DAZ and pose it and render out something to use as reference. So I am definitely not taking a dump on DAZ or anything
Yeah, one of there's this whole channel on YouTube that posts all of the Game Developer Conference talks called GDC, and one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was this talk about what's the term? Not like concept artists. That's what it was. And what he would do is he used DAZ too. Is he would create the scene in DAZ using just like blocking it out, and that would be his rough, and he would just paint directly on top of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went to an illustration masterclass in 2017 now, I think. Man, it's hard, like even just a few years later, things start to blur together in the past, right? But
yeah, I know what you mean.
But they basically, there were a lot of professional illustrators. If any of your listeners are into the illustration world, there was like Donato Giancola was there, Rebecca Gay, Boris Vallejo, Greg Mann, a bunch of like big illustration world guys. And they were like, use anything. Nothing's off limits to make the image look the way it needs to look. If you're taking things from 3D, or if there's like a photo collage element, whatever you have to do to make the piece look good is what you have to do. So use every tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. So what inspired you to create the Vigilant Lionesses?
Yeah, so that's the Vigilant Lioness is the name of my project, for those that don't know. And so when I started painting it in school, I'd actually been working on like a fantasy series, and it was going really poorly because I'm trying, I'm going to do this big epic project. There's a huge story and a shit ton of characters, and there's monster designs and stuff. But I'm also trying to learn how to paint at the same time because at my school you couldn't start painting your first year. So you have your freshman year where you're just doing basic drawing, and then sophomore year you start actually getting to play with paint. And then so I was in junior year, and 2 years under your belt with oil painting is not really that much, especially at the university I went to. We would only meet twice a week, so it wasn't as intense maybe as some other programs. So I was really on the struggle bus hard. The paintings I was making were not very successful. So I was like, man, I'm so over this fantasy project because I don't have the skills to do it. And it's like, man, I just want to paint like this giant heroine. So I just did it. And honestly, I struggled with it too, but I think maybe I was being more true to the kind of content I wanted to create or something, and that helped give me the strength to push through it. But once I made that first one, the professor's like, well, you need to figure out where this imagery is coming from, and like, you need to start writing a thesis, and come up with all the theory and all the reasoning behind it. At art school, you can't just make something and say, here's the thing I made. You have to be able to provide a crap ton of explanation. So,
okay.
Yeah. So without, taking a dump on my family's life, because I have a really good relationship with my parents now. But when I was growing up, it was a pretty dysfunctional household.
Okay.
My mom did she worked a lot and was the main breadwinner. And I'd stay at home with my dad and my brother. And, I was probably a little bit of an asshole as a kid. But having said that, I don't know that if everything that happened was necessarily entirely deserved. But, there was just a lot of fighting between my dad and then me and my brother growing up. And I never felt very empowered,
Right.
And I had to rely on my mom kind of to diffuse these situations. It'd be the end of the workday, and my brother and I would both be sobbing in our rooms or whatever, and then she would get home and we'd have a big family discussion or something. So I don't know. I always felt I was not necessarily a super manly man or whatever, and I don't know. There's kind of all this childhood stuff that comes through these paintings. These big protectors, saving people from these monsters. And I kind of borrowed that imagery from a lot of the shows I was watching at the time. I was super into Power Rangers, Powerpuff Girls, Megas XLR, Godzilla. All these cartoons I would watch have, for one thing, strong female role models, and then also giant monsters and cities being destroyed and stuff. So I took that imagery I was immersing myself in, and then took what was happening in my life, and now that I'm an adult, I'm reflecting back on it and kind of jammed them together,
Yeah. When my home life was pretty I think at the end of the day, I think it was pretty good. But it's interesting that I also had a situation where my mother was the main breadwinner. My dad, initially, he was a salesman, and he was always out really, really late. He would get up super early in the morning and then come home super late, and he would basically never see us. And he actually made a decision to stay at home and be a stay-at-home dad rather than leaving us with our grandma.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I also had strong women in my life, particularly my mother. It's interesting.
Yeah, we have to get a survey going and see. Just my girlfriend and I have been watching My 600-Pound Life, and almost everybody in that show is well, it all began with the child abuse or whatever, and it's just interesting to see how different cultures or communities of people, what they all have in common, what caused them to head in the direction they did, whether it be this interest in giants or whatever, or eating disorders or what have you, anything at all.
I also like the kind of role model aspect.
Yeah, I'm really interested in feminism and non-traditional gender roles, so I want to make stuff that is, that somebody can look to and be that is a person I want to be. I just saw Captain Marvel, and my girlfriend,
me too.
She was beaming through the whole movie. She's she's so cool, and I'm I know. But there were even little kids you could hear getting excited in the theater and stuff, and honestly, it wasn't even annoying in this instance. But yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing with my paintings, and do paintings that kind of celebrate female strength, especially in a physical sense. Going back to people in my life that I know that weightlift or bodybuild or whatever. They the women that do that sometimes get a bad rap. Like, oh, people say, oh, you look like a man. You're not very womanly or feminine or whatever. And it's like, what does that really mean?
Yeah,
Like, go ahead.
I don't know. I think some people, it's like they like to slot things into very specific boxes,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, the human body is beautiful and is really interesting, especially coming from an artist. I did a ton of nude figure drawing, both men and women of all shapes and sizes, and it's definitely something worth celebrating. A lot of my influence too comes from classical paintings. If there's any art fans out there,
I can definitely see that.
Caravaggio, Bouguereau, contemporary guys, Donato Giancola again, Jeremy Geddes, but these people that really celebrate the human form, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I think these women in the paintings they're almost like Greek goddesses or something, and they're like these idealized superheroes, basically, both in a contemporary sense and a historical sense.
Awesome. So I'd like to talk a bit about the actual world that you've created. Could you just give us like a primer? Yeah,
so this is the like if you were on Netflix, and there's like a little tagline or whatever. Here it is. It's attacks by colossal city-destroying monsters have become routine. To escape her dysfunctional home life, Lillian Kennedy volunteers for the only organization that can oppose them. So it follows a girl named Lillian, and that's pretty much wrapped up in just that little tagline there. She kind of has a dysfunctional home life, issues with her parents as well. I'm trying to work through some of my own life through the story and drawing inspiration from it. And I'm also taking a big influence from like, what's happening in the U.S. right now with like the student loan crisis and poverty and all that kind of stuff. She can't afford to go to school. She can't really escape on her own. So the only route for her to try to get away, basically, is to join up with a group that does an incredibly dangerous mission. So over the course,
giant monsters.
Yeah, put your life on the line every time you go out there. So the course of the story, travel goes over as she's kind of this reluctant hero. Like she's not there because she wants to save people necessarily. She's there because she feels like that's the only route she has. Like kind of like people that here feel like they have to
join the army.
That join the army, exactly. Oh man, I can't pay for school. What am I going to do? I guess I'll join the army. Not that that's the only thing that happens. There's people that join because they do want to, and there's characters like that in the story as well. Mainly her rival, Astrid. But
okay. So have any of these characters featured in your in any of the paintings you've done so far in this setting?
Yeah, it's kind of funny to ask that, right? Because I'm like, maybe.
Okay.
I've got like kind of a pool of models that I work with. Some are like art school friends, or like my girlfriend's been in a few paintings. But the paintings came before the story did. So like I knew at the when I was in art school, I want to do paintings of these giant heroines fighting kaiju and saving people. Kind of turning that whole male protector, female damsel on its head. But I didn't have any of the characters yet. So I've just started purely with imagery. And probably it was my second semester of junior year, maybe the beginning of senior year, when I like actually started. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this thing a series, and there's gonna be a story. Because if you remember, I said that fantasy project I was trying to work on was the opposite. It was like I started building this huge giant thing in my head, and in like Word documents, and it was like, all right, let's make some art. And then the art sucked, right. And it was like, well, damn it. So,
damn it.
Yeah. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm going through and I've written the story out. I'm on the second rough draft, and I'm doing sketches and digital paintings to try to rough out the book, like create like a storyboard, basically.
Yeah. It sounds like you've kind of gone the opposite way with the Vigilant Lioness project. Like before you started out, you wanted to create this whole complicated world, but now you flipped the script and you started with like a kernel of an idea that you're then building upon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like, okay, I have this interest to make this thing. Let's see if it actually pans out. How interested am I really? Because how many times, it's like, oh man, I got this great idea for a game or whatever, and then you pop open the software and you're like 15 minutes in, you're like, oh man, this is gonna be so hard. I actually don't want to do this at all.
Yeah, that's a big problem. A lot of new game developers run into, especially if they want to go independent. They want to make the games that they play, and those games take like 200 people 5 years, to make.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of let this evolve more naturally. I was like, I'm gonna make these paintings. Let's see how I feel about them, what the response is like, and go from there. But now we're in the thick of it. I'm working on the sketches for the book, and it looks like on my current estimates, it's going to be at least 60 paintings, I think. So this is like a big thing. If you'd like to support the project, you can go to Patreon, and I'm posting things behind the scenes there. But yeah, so I've got the thing written out. And basically, once I get deeper into the digital studies, I'm going to see from my model pool, who I need to hire, because I do pay all my models.
Right.
Because I'm going to need to hire the character. I need to find the perfect person to play Lillian or her dad, or whatever. And then I need to shoot a bunch of reference at once, because what if they move away, or they decide they don't want to do it anymore, or something happens, where they can't do it, or whatever, So it's like, it would be a real shame to get 15 paintings in and then my model isn't available anymore. And, it's like that super jarring feeling where you're watching a TV show and then the character just spontaneously changes appearance.
So you have to make sure to get a lot of different poses.
Yeah, so that's why the studies are so important first, is because if I know what I'm, I build cardboard sets for all of my paintings.
Really?
So actually, again, if you'd like to see process shots of that, yeah, I post everything on Patreon. So if you go on the Patreon, you're going to get the writing I've done so far, the studies, but on the old paintings, you can see every step of the process. So you can see the photos I take with the models, sets I build, process shots. But I build little cardboard cities, or if you go on my Instagram, you can see I'm just finishing up a painting of a woman with a wind turbine.
Oh yeah.
I built a cardboard wind turbine to scale, so it was up to this it was so big it didn't really fit in my house, honestly. Because the wind turbines around here anyway, I'm in the Midwest United States. They're 212 feet tall from the ground to the top of the tower, but then the blades are an extra
bigger still.
116 feet. Yeah, so the overall height of one of these things is 330 some feet.
Oh, okay. How big are the giantesses?
So I use 1 to 36 scale. So what that means is a 6-foot person is 36 times bigger. Let me pull my calculator out. I should have this figure memorized, but it is, for those listening, it is 7 a.m. where I'm at right now, and I am not ready to do math. 216 feet tall. So yeah, basically whatever
216.
Yeah, whatever size you are before you undergo the transformation, the result is 36 times bigger.
Okay.
So right about the height of the tower of a wind turbine, or at least one that's here in my part of the U.S.
That's definitely something people like to know. How big is your giantess?
Yeah, I try to pay really close attention to scale, because I want the paintings to be as real as possible. Some of my favorite artists are all just really deep realists. They paint things either from life or from models, and they just it's like staring into a window into another world. I don't want the art to kind of interfere, if that makes sense. The viewer should be transported to the place I'm trying to depict. So, the shepherdess painting that I'm doing the Kickstarter for has these little tiny dumpsters in an alleyway on the left side of the piece. Yeah. So I built this little cardboard dumpster, and the top lids open.
Oh, nice.
You can animate them. You pull them up and down, and there's so I use tons of props that I make. and basically everything in the pursuit of realism, you know.
So, when we talked the other day, you were talking about how, like, the government of this world wasn't willing to do anything about it. Like, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, another influence on this, I talked about, you know, the political situation in the U.S. I don't want to alienate, but I don't want to alienate any listeners. You know, I'm not trying to start a political thing, but I think we can all agree that the situation right now is not super great over here. There's a lot of chaos going on. So the world of Vigilant Lioness takes place in, you know, the year 20XX, so somewhere in the near future, but kind of indeterminate. And the U.S. is in a lot of wars with other countries around the globe. There's the climate crisis has kind of reached a head, and just all these things that are pulling the government's attention away, you know, from home, basically, you know, and
from these giant monsters that are just smashing everything.
Yeah, smashing everything, but specifically, you know, hitting urban population centers, which, you know, the city I'm in, I don't live in a great part of town. You know, it's usually the deeper into the city you go, usually the lower income class, you know, so.
I guess all the rich people have moved to the country.
Exactly. You know, they've moved inland because these things come from the coast, so they're off in their sweet villas or whatever, you know.
And like, aren't they afraid that these lionesses might turn against them?
Well, absolutely. That plays into the story. I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay.
But
Fair
yes,
enough.
there's definitely that is addressed. That there's a lot of tension between government officials and the independent Lioness organization.
Nice. And do the government officials ever try to like get the Lioness organization's technology or try to use them for their own purposes?
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, what kind of government would it be if they, you know, weren't trying to control everything?
I can imagine they might try and like control the giant monsters as well if they could swing that.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, you know, it's like I don't want to go down that because I do feel like that is maybe a generic plot that we see a lot. Is like,
Yeah,
you know,
I guess that's
the ultimate monster. We have the ultimate weapon now. But I'm sure there's somebody in some departments. You know, he's like, that's the ticket right there.
Actually, it might be cool if there was a scene where like that guy brings it up and everyone is just like, you fucking stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Shut up, man. You know, go back and go back to your cubicle. Get us some coffees. You're not allowed in this discussion anymore. Yeah, and you know,
well,
I was just gonna say you know, it's just subject to change right now because it's still relatively early in the process. So the project's evolving all the time.
Absolutely.
So some things that I'm like, oh, that's not in there. Maybe it is later in there later as the project develops, or maybe things are removed or whatever. You know, so nothing's carved in stone yet. I think it's really important for artists or writers, whatever your creative profession is, you know, to not get so fixated on an idea that you become, you know, blinded by it. You know, like you should keep things malleable. You know.
Yeah. So can like anyone undergo this growing process, or is it just like specific people? Like you have to have some kind of gene or something like that?
Yeah, that's something I'm still playing with currently, because I do feel like I don't want it to be arbitrary. You know, like, oh, only women can do it. Why? And then not have a good reason. You know, right now
maybe it's the estrogen.
Perhaps, yeah, I don't know. I probably should consult with like a scientist or whatever and be like, hey, what are some, you know, help me make my, oh god, what's that term for like movie science? Not MacGuffin, but I don't know, help me make my phlebotomium, that's what it is, phlebotomium.
That's it,
yeah.
That's it, phlebotomium.
Yeah, help me make that as realistic as I can. But, you know, and currently in the story I said, you know, we're at war with a lot of different people, so there's like a draft instituted. A military draft, and at least over here right now, and there's some. This is like in court right now, so it might be changing. But currently, men are the only ones that can get drafted.
Okay.
So if you're in physical health enough that you could like fight a giant monster, you're probably drafted. And if you're not drafted, why aren't you? Is kind of where I'm at right now.
Right.
So the only ones available to do it are women. Kind of like how in World War II, all the men went away, so the women were the ones that were working in factories and taking up these traditionally male jobs because there were no men to do it. It's kind of like that.
Wow.
So it's not necessarily a science issue.
So you must be in some really intense wars.
Yeah, I guess so. I think the political climate in this world is not great anywhere. It's
kind of a shit show.
Yeah, kind of a shit show. Because I don't know, I feel like I have a lot of anxiety in real life, about where the world is headed.
So, are you planning to do any sort of? Okay, I was watching a video the other day about how the Marvel movies changed, and one of the things that the guy pointed out was how when Joss Whedon was doing the movies, he took like a decent amount of time to sort of show what was going on with normal people, and to show the heroes rescuing normal people, and then when he left, that stopped. I was just wondering, have you thought about just sort of showing this conflict from the perspective of people who are on the ground when this is all going down? Yeah,
absolutely. Those are my favorite images. I think if you look at my portfolio right now, which you can totally see on MathewJHuntley.com, you can see that those are pretty much the paintings I'm focusing on, and are at least starting to integrate more now, especially with Shepherdess or the piece with the wind turbine that I'm just finishing up. I think it's, for me, the most interesting thing is to depict the women saving people or interacting with them rather than fighting the monsters. Not that I'm not interested in monsters, but a lot of my art training was on the human body, and a lot of my historical influences. They didn't do giant monster paintings back in the 1800s. They painted humans. So coming up with cool monster designs, I think, is a bit tougher and something I'm still exploring. Because I want to do it right. There's a painting with a frog monster, Lions at Daybreak, and the response to the frog monster right now has been pretty mixed. Some people are like, "That's cool, I really like that one," and then one of my other friends was literally laughing, and which is not good. That's not what I was going for.
I actually do like that painting for the little guy who's off in the corner, standing on the roof.
Yeah, those are my favorite moments, depicting just how both bizarre and surreal and massive everything is, from the human perspective. So right now in the book, a lot of the fight scenes are from human level depictions. There's always civilians in the scenes, it's always from street level, or if it's from a rooftop or something, there's somebody there. So yeah, to answer your question, that's the main focus, I guess, is depicting these human interactions with giants and monsters.
Nice. Interaction has always been on the top of my list when it comes to this whole fantasy.
Yeah, and even thinking back again to the movies I liked growing up, I think some of my favorite scenes from Pacific Rim are when the robots are in the city, and you remember Gypsy Danger is trying to punch the thing and misses and goes into that office building with his
and it does the thing with that little toy.
Yeah, things like that. I just love the without that, it doesn't feel grounded. It doesn't feel like they may be fighting around quote unquote buildings, but it's not real somehow.
I mean, I have to say, I love the part when they pick up a boat and smash it over
and use it as a sword.
Head.
Yeah. That part is fantastic. Pacific Rim is definitely a big inspiration.
Whenever I tell someone about Lioness, I basically say It's like Pacific Rim, but with giant women instead of robots.
Yeah, that is definitely not inaccurate. Of course, having said that, it's not a ripoff at all. I'm not trying to be Pacific Rim, but I think, when you're doing something in this genre, it is hard not to draw from the past, like giant monsters attacking cities. That's Pacific Rim, Power Rangers, Godzilla, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Ultraman, to do this.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like you're going to have to hit some of these major tropes to even do this genre. Otherwise, you can't do it. Having said that, though, where I live in the Midwest, the city I'm in is not super big compared to some of the other cities in the U.S.
Right.
And some of my favorite imagery, which I'm starting to incorporate now, is like, going out on the interstate and there's just hundreds of wind turbines as far as you can see. So it's like really flat countryside and then these huge wind turbines. So I think, as I'm developing the project and expressing myself more and more, I'm definitely super interested in these city scenes, but I'm also finding I really love doing like these industrial hangars and stuff, which you can see some of.
Oh yeah.
And I'm really
I love the pictures involving the hangars.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites. And then I'm also finding that more and more of my sketches recently are depicting like suburbs or like highways as of late, So I think even within this crowded genre of giant monsters, there's still ways to either aesthetically or narratively stand out. It's about finding ways to put your own unique spin on it while still hitting those basics, which would be like giant monsters in a city, rampaging or whatever.
Are you gonna have any paintings of the lionesses, like just kind of having fun with their size?
So
maybe like a PR exercise with the public or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that specifically. I know I'm thinking. I'll give you some more story information. The way it works is kind of like the Animorphs. Are you familiar with the Animorphs at all?
I mean, I know there are people who can morph into animals. That's about as far as I know.
Okay, yeah. So I loved those books when I was a kid, and they had a very strict limit to their powers. So they could turn into any animal they touched, but they could only do it for 2 hours, where you got stuck that way forever. And I think right now, in the current draft of the story, it's something very similar. Like, these women can switch back and forth with the help of like this big chamber, basically. But there's like there's a time limit on it. It's almost like Evangelion, when the Evas launch, they're plugged in, and once the plug comes out, the umbilical, they've only got like 5 minutes to fight before they run out of power.
Okay. So after they run out, do they shrink back down?
No. It's not. So it's similar but different, right? So they after the time limit passes, they are trapped that way. So, I've got some sketches for imagery of like women who have kind of made the quote unquote ultimate sacrifice or semi-ultimate sacrifice. They're not dead, but they can no longer return to normal life. So, it becomes a big psychological toll because it's really hard to interact with people now. Like a lot of the things you did before, you can't do anymore because you're the size of a building. So maybe they're, they're at base and they're projecting a movie for her, on the side of a building, and all the people are gathered out, and, she's like trying to partake in human activities and still be connected to humanity, but it's hard, So there's
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's some imagery like that coming down the pipeline that explores kind of the realities, I guess, of what
being huge.
Yeah, of being huge and being stuck huge, because that is like a big risk, I guess, because you can't control, if you transform at this facility, you've got to then transport yourself to wherever the fight is happening, and who knows how long that's going to take. Once you get there, so I just want to make it as dangerous as possible, I guess, to really drive home the sacrifice these women are making, and the strength of will that they have to go out there and do this job, even though it's a fantasy story, and it's science fiction, and kind of has like these elements of childhood shows. Like there's still this kind of serious core to it. Like there's fun imagery, but there's also like a serious undertone.
Yeah. I think if you can strike a good balance, I think the property will appeal to more than just the Giantess community.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding. Like I definitely didn't design it with this community in mind. I think it's interesting now. Like I'm on Instagram, and a lot of the people that like it are like art school friends. I get comments from them. I get comments from bodybuilders and again CrossFit athletes and stuff. You're like, man, this is awesome. And then more and more people from this community are kind of trickling over and discovering my work. So it's kind of interesting that if there's like a pie chart, that showed like this person is into like this community or whatever, this community is starting to take up a bigger slice, or at least starting to appear on the pie chart, I guess, more accurately.
You should definitely do like some demographic research.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to get some surveys going.
And surveys are so fun. Or at least I think they're fun when they're about stuff I'm interested in.
Right, yeah. I absolutely agree. Like, yeah.
So, do you have any plans for the future to like make this into some kind of franchise or something?
Yeah, kind of, I guess. Like, I definitely, the main focus for me right now is doing more paintings and doing the book.
Maybe plans is a too solid of a word. Maybe hopes.
Yeah. That's probably more accurate, because I don't want to say like, oh, it's going to be this giant super mega franchise, and then like nobody cares about the book or something, and so I think if I had like a dream board, it was like pipe dreams. I think getting like a game made would be really cool. I think getting either like a cartoon or obviously a movie, like that's the highest up there. Like this got turned into like a big budget movie. Like, oh my god, that'd be the dream come true right there. Yeah, that'd be the holy grail, I guess. But as far as me personally goes right now, I'm doing the Kickstarter, so I'm starting to kind of branch out as far as merchandise goes. I'm going to my first convention this year. That is nice. In October. I believe it's the 23rd through the 27th. I believe is the date. I'm going to Illuxcon in Pennsylvania. So if you're in the U.S. and on the East Coast, or coming out here for any reason, I'm going to be at Illuxcon in the showcase, so you can see my work in person there. Like I said, I'm doing the book. I'm writing stories. A lot of the paintings, if you go on DeviantArt or again my portfolio website, there's like a little narrative blurb that goes with each painting. So there's like a little bit of a story element there. But yeah, definitely just being open-minded about it. If somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, we think your property would be great for X," I'd definitely be open to that.
Nice. Oh, well, so is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, I think I just throw my links out there one more time. So this MathewJHuntley.com is my main website, and there's a link to the Kickstarter there. You go there. Instagram.com/MattHuntleyArtist. That's kind of where I post a lot of. That's like the main hub. If you want to make sure to not miss anything, go there. Or if you want to make sure to really not miss anything, go to Patreon.com/MathewHuntley, because stuff that I don't post anywhere else, again, like behind the scenes stuff, the process, the cardboard models I build, the human models I work with, those are all posted there. Yeah, I think that's about it. Check out the Kickstarter. Please check out the Kickstarter, because again, it's ending on the 28th, so time is running out.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for coming and listening to us talk about our Giantess fantasies.
So long, everybody. Hopefully, see you around on the internet somewhere. And thanks again so much for having me on.
If any of you have any topics you'd like us to talk about, or if you have any news related to the Giantess community, please feel free to send me a link or a description down at Giantess Arcade on Twitter. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.